Hi, I'm odeean. Today I'm having a look at KFC's Transistor, which is an update to G1 Blaster in the kind of masterpiece style. It's a pretty big figure, but G1 Blaster was a pretty tall figure as well. It comes in what should be a nice box, but for some reason my copy of this, the box doesn't seem to have been folded together properly, and it's just like deformed and ill-fitting. Not very happy with the box. It does have a magnetic catch at the front with a nice window section, but the overall poor assembly of mine just makes it look pretty shit. Like even on the inside, you can see that the panels don't match up. It's just like the whole thing has been glued in a misaligned fashion. Besides the box with the actual toy, I also got these hands for Masterpiece Soundwave. I bought the set from Chumung and it was listed as a second run. I don't really think this was a second run because the hands were meant to only come with the first production, I believe. So he probably just bought it 2 times. I don't know what the deal is with that. Either way, the one he has listed there now is what I bought, and it did come with these hands. We get a small comic which doubles as an instruction manual. It's nice enough. I don't care much for the comics in general. I probably have a flip through this later on. Apart from that, we get little instructions for the cassette dude that ships with this set. We get 2 thick credit card style bios, trading cards, whatever you want to call them. Little text specs on the back. They're nice enough. They're a little bit dark, but they are thick and glossy. We get 2 spare heads for I think it's eject he's supposed to be inside, and finally we get a little spare section for Blaster's eyes so he can have light piping if you don't like the painted eyes that he comes with. And all of that was just loose in the box. Once you get into the bubble itself, obviously we get the Transistor / Blaster toy, and he's got the cartoon accurate head on. We get 2 of these megaphones that he can place onto his fists to blast sound waves at people. A cassette case inside of which there is a minion for Blaster to use in his chest, and that's a nice looking cassette there. 2 small pistols to go with that guy, which are kind of gold painted, not chromed, just gold paint. 2 Blaster style guns, just like G1 Blaster, except kind of updated, that's slightly transformed to fit into this guy's cassette mode. And finally, a second head, more comic style head for the main figure itself. The Blaster toy itself, it is what you would expect. It looks like Blaster. Blaster is not the most exciting robot, but he is prominent in the movie, and because of that it's kind of a favourite, and I do want to have a Masterpiece Blaster, hence why I bought it. You can see I've stuck a Autobot sticker on there because I bought it from Chumung. Tony always puts a sheet of, I think they're official stickers that he buys in with the package, so that's pretty cool. I got that in there. I'm going to say straight off, the head doesn't seem to attach properly, so the head is removable, and I think that's got something to do with it. It's a little bit loose, and as I turn it, it kind of disconnects from, like there's a pivot inside there that it's supposed to join onto the neck, and it kind of just ends up free floating in there, which is, it doesn't affect the toy too much, but it just is a little bit, like it's a little bit of bad design that I'm kind of not too happy with. The hands on this toy have amazing articulation. Each finger has all the knuckles, it's got ball joints. It's really, really good. I don't personally need or require that much articulation in the hand. So long as they stay together like these ones seem to do, I'm happy to have it on my figure, but it's not something that I really care that much about. If it had been the case that the quality wasn't there or the fingers popped off, I would have been pretty annoyed to have it like that, but as it turns out, these KFC hands work pretty well. So I'm guessing that the one for Soundwave that they've included is exactly the same. I do like the movie accurate head, but I think that the paintwork, especially too much white between the top of the head and the face, makes it a little bit less attractive to me. And I did read the comics as a kid, pretty much every single issue, so I do have some good memories of that other head. So I'm going to go ahead and unscrew this, pop on the other one. You can see at the back here, there's just a little screw there, so I'm going to do that off camera. I'll be back in a minute. Here's Blaster with the other head. Now I've got to say, this head seems to fit much better than the other head. You can see as I turn it, it doesn't come off its little joint there. It tilts up and stays up. It's got more friction. I think it's got something to do with the light piping, and that's because this guy on the back of the second head doesn't have the same setup. Like if I hold it next to each other, you can see there's the slot for the light piping on the original head, and I think that it interferes in some way with the little pivot on the inside. I actually like this one better anyway. For articulation, you've got in and out at the shoulder. You can go the whole way around. No clicks to be heard, just friction. We've got a bicep swivel. We've got a double jointed elbow, although the second joint, it doesn't really add anything. I think it's mainly got to do with transformation, so pretty much count that as one joint. We've got these fully articulated fingers, which is heaps. Let's see, is there a waist swivel? Yes, there's a waist swivel, but some of this gear at the back bumps a little bit, so you have to raise that panel. At the hips, we've got clicks on the outward swing, soft detents on backwards and forward swing, about 45 degrees in each direction. Swivel at the thigh, 90 degrees at the knee, it's not double jointed. Some ratchets there, sounds like a spring-loaded ratchet. And a universal joint for the foot. There does seem to be some little heels in here, if I can maybe pop them out. Yep, that's pretty cool. It didn't come popped out, so for more stability you can do that, although he did seem to stand just fine without it. The guns just tab in like with pretty much any Masterpiece Transformer these days. It isn't exactly the same style tab as what we get on other figures, but it does work, which is a big plus. So a lot of the third-party stuff with these tabs doesn't seem to get the tolerances right, but this one, I spoke too soon. The first one went in flawlessly, now second one having issue with. No, that works fine. I think it's just that I've got the arm twisted around there. If I had the arm facing the right way, that would have gone in easier. But either way, look at that. Pretty significant shaking is not shaking that loose. I think it's great that they included two guns. Something just more cool about it. Now, I don't know why they did two guns. The original, from memory, only had one gun, but it's just good. I like it. Maybe they did it for symmetry when it's in cassette mode. I haven't transformed it yet, so maybe it's got something to do with how they line up in that mode, but I just like having the two guns. I like it a lot. I'm going to try and get the speaker into his hand now. To do that, make a fist just like this. You want to roll those fingers right up, get the thumb down in that position. We're going to have to untransform his forearm, so flip up that panel, move this down, open this panel, move that up like that. Pretty complicated, but it will work. I'm going to flip the hand around so that the fingers are facing in the direction that they go into the forearm. Just makes it a little bit easier to get out later. And you can see that reveals a peg on the end. So I'm going to put all this back now. Oh, hang on, this goes first, then this. Finally this back down, that pegs in. And now I can just peg this right on like that, and it forms a very secure bond. I don't really care for this. I doubt that I'm going to display it this way. It's a pretty cool extra. I wouldn't have paid anything more for it, but the fact that they threw it in is pretty good. Now I'm going to show how his cassette feature works. So we've got this here, which is surprisingly well working, very smooth and locks in quite well. Works much smoother than my original G1 did. I'm going to try and first put in the Ravage cassette from Masterpiece, which I have here. So let's pop this open. And the flap at the back, like the little panel, is in its first position, which is what we want. Make sure that the tape is square. Okay, that works pretty nicely. Comes out pretty nicely. Let's try and get two tapes in. So I'm going to pop him in there and then just push it back one notch and stick in. This is the cassette that comes with Blaster. Now the door jams a little bit with a cassette in there. Let's lean it down. That's a little bit unfortunate. I'm going to try pushing the button and see if that will get it out. Whoop. Well, it does. It shoots it out. Leaves our second tape in there. Let's see what happens if I push it one more time. It should be in shouldn't come out at all one more time actually, because it's already in the final position. No, nothing else happens. So, I mean, the tape has got issues, a little bit of jamming issue as it comes out on the, like as the door flips open, but it's nothing too bad. If you got 2 in there, it definitely shoots that first one out. Let's do that again. That's 3 back now. 1 to be flat. No, it's jamming. So it's not perfect, but workable. Looking at Blaster from the back, his back is pretty clean and neat. Now, if you want to store the guns on the back, it is definitely possible, but you do have to just untransform this a little bit so that this panel is flush. That opens this up so that you can put that peg into the hole on the side of the gun. So he can store both his weapons on his back if you desire. For a size comparison, most importantly, here he is with Masterpiece Soundwave. He's a little bit taller than Masterpiece Soundwave, which is appropriate given that his G1 toy was taller than G1 Soundwave. Just while I've got Soundwave out, this figure has some very, very annoying silver paint issues. Look at that button. I've hardly played with this and the silver is worn right off that button, probably from the acid on my fingers. Nobody should be making toys where just finger acid from otherwise clean hands dissolves the paint right off. It's starting to go from this groin area here, so the buttons on the front, which I've hardly even touched, the silver is starting to fade from there. That is bad form from Takara, and I think that is pretty pathetic. I would have preferred that they had went with a silver paint rather than chrome if I had known the chrome was going to come off so easily. Transistor with Hasbro's version of MP10, Masterpiece Prime. He's a little bigger, I think, shoulder to shoulder. Blaster is almost exactly the same, or maybe even just a little bit taller at the shoulder, but head-wise, Prime just comes a little bit taller with the head. Here's 2 blasters, this one from Unique Toys. So worlds apart, really like 50% the size. This fits more with Deluxes, with Generations Deluxes, which is why I bought it. I thought it's pretty cool, but definitely this guy is Masterpiece. Now, I was always a bit weird with some of the Masterpiece figures being this big, especially Autobots. I'm not, look, you know, Soundwave, it's very hard to get your Autobots and Decepticons on the same shelf because they just naturally have that size difference, especially when some of them are jets, but it doesn't really gel with what we see in the cartoon. So it's always, I'm always of 2 minds as to how I would like them to be, but I think that it's right that they made him the same size as Soundwave. I don't regret buying this little Unique Toys guy. He's pretty cool. Here he is with DX9's Invisible that I reviewed just the other day, so that's about the same size as a normal MP car. And with iGear's version of, who is this? Thundercracker. Here he is with Fall of Cybertron Blaster. This guy's got one up, you know, he can push his own button. His hand can reach his own button, which, although is ridiculous, robot needing to push a button to open his chest, it's something we see in the cartoon. That's cool. This guy can't really hit his own button, so I know there's buttons on this side for this hand and this pretend one for this hand. His finger can't hit his own button. He just can't reach it. I know it's a kind of quibble, but if you like to pose in that dynamic I'm pushing my button pose, you're not going to be able to really get it. Even though his articulation is good, it just misses out on that. And sadly, I have no G1 Blaster to compare him to. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I've been systematically selling a lot of my stuff, and G1 is gone, G1 Blaster is gone. That Fall of Cybertron Blaster that I just showed, he is on his way out too. So I'm trying to condense my collection down to the best representations of characters, and when I've got this, I don't really feel I need anything else anymore. I mean, I'm still going to keep the Unique Toys guy just because of the size difference, but if I see it's on the way out, normally at this point I would show the transformation. I'm not going to do it, and the simple reason is that while I was practicing this, there were some tiny little flakes of paint coming off the figure, and I don't want to transform this again after I go out of this cassette mode back to robot mode. He's never going to go back into cassette mode. I did mention before that you can stow these. I saw in the instructions. Now, to do that, you could pop these off, and there's a section where it can peg on the inside. I'm also not going to show that for the same reason. I don't really need to do that. These can go back in the box. It looks nice in this mode. I mean, it is what it is. It's this big boombox. I doubt that anyone permanently wants to store him in his boombox mode, because it really doesn't do that much. It looks pretty nice. If there's any weakness, maybe these plastic details here could have been really perforated instead of just the dimples, because they look a little bit spongy. The cassette door still works, and the feature still works as you'd expect. You still have access to the button at the back to pop those out. Looking at the back, it is a little bit greebly, but not too egregious. I mean, the whole area is pretty much covered, although it's not very flat. On the underside, though, you can see what's going on with shell forming, basically. A lot of panels fold out to form a shell, and on the underside you can see his legs in there, and even some of the workings of his hip ratchet. So it's not very nice from the underside, but again, you're never going to really see that. If it's on the shelf, you can't see the underside, so that's passable. The handle is pretty nice. It's strong. Look at that. It can easily take the weight. I like the way the handle folds up into the legs. So all in all, a pretty successful alt mode. Very, very shelly. Like a lot of things had to tab together to form this shell, and it's that tabbing together, and some of these panels swivel on top of glossy paint. That's the reason that I can't do it again, and I'm really not willing to wreck the look of the figure just to do a transformation. Looking at their eject here, I think it is, he's a pretty shitty little figure. It's not the idea or the design, but just the production that makes it bad. So he's covered in this thick paint, which is, every time I move it, just scraping off. And I mean, he suffers from far worse paint issues than the main figure. The main figure hasn't had any major chips. It just felt like it might from the tiny flakes coming off. Whereas this little guy, you can see in his joints there, the paint is just smeared all over. I think these are even die-cast sections, maybe. And it looks a little bit shiny, feels a little bit cold. I think that the die-cast sections are what's causing it. It is not nice. The paint on the face, if I zoom in a little bit there, is very gooey. And I've seen, like, if you look at a Perfect Effect figure, which is smaller than this, they are perfection. And this is just badly made. I would still like to see a masterpiece, an official masterpiece version of these cassettes. I can't see why that won't happen. I'm guessing that it will happen one day, and hopefully, I mean, obviously if it fits Masterpiece now, it'll fit them in the future, so then we can get some official ones in there. I feel like maybe if KFC had made this all out of the proper coloured plastics, instead of trying to paint it so much, it may have turned out better. I'm not going to transform him again either. I don't really love the robot mode that much. I'll probably stick him back into tape mode, and that'll be it for him. To illustrate some of that paint flaking, let's have a look here. This is a tab. It's been stripped of paint. It's going to spread, so you can see little flakes coming off there. The whole figure smells of a lacquer smell, so it's like they've sprayed some kind of gloss over everything. And once you put a chip in that, I'm almost certain that section is going to spread outwards until it ruins the whole area. Something, I mean, that's on the side, it annoys me less. Something that annoys me a little bit more, even though it looks less, is his earpieces up here. The tolerance is really tight, and it rubs on the panel as it goes into his backpack. It's stripped the red off his ears, which I can't help but notice every time I look at the figure. So it's that's kind of bad. More tabs over here, getting stripped. This section, you can't see it now, but there's a sliding up and down thing that suffered a little bit. There's other sections you can't see that they've kind of tabbed in robot mode. You don't notice it, but when you untab them to transform it, you see it again. So all in all, God, the paint looks good. I mean, it looks really good in robot mode. It's very shiny, very red, nice and glossy. As long as you keep it in robot mode, it's fantastic. Never transform this thing. It's just going to destroy your toy. It's such a disappointment. I mean, what can I say? I would have preferred them to go with a plastic that looks good from the beginning instead of having to paint it. And I think it was a huge mistake to paint it this way. And I'll bet that at some point in the future, KFC release a version that is red, not painted red, and hope that everyone will buy that to make up for this chipping kind of paint disaster. So my final thoughts are that it wasn't that expensive for the size. Because of that fact, I kind of give it a little bit of a pass, and especially because Blaster is a character that I only want to look at in robot mode, they can get away with it. But it destroys my confidence in KFC. There is very little chance that I will ever buy anything from KFC before seeing somebody else say that this doesn't happen, because I don't really think it's acceptable. So how much was it? I think the figure was $120 or something like that, Chmung plus shipping. So given that it's a big figure, that's not too expensive. It is very light, and the overall quality of the joints and stuff is high enough, but that paint is a pretty major flaw. I do like it. I don't regret buying it. It is just going to stand there exactly like this, so it fills the need that I had. But I'm definitely wide open to getting anything from an official release. I'd love to see that. I would love to see FansToys or some other quality company do a blaster, because we need a blaster that doesn't flake to pieces. So I mean, I'm even worried now about posing it. You can see as you move it, it rubs, the plastic rubs together. I'm worried about even posing it on the shelf too much, because I don't want just inadvertent bumping, flaking off big chunks. Now, it might look that I'm complaining about nothing here, because there's nothing too visible when you see it on camera like that, but stuff like that spreads, and I think in the long run this is probably doomed to be a pretty crappy looking figure. Right now it's pretty good, and it'll do for the time being. So this has been my video review for KFC's masterpiece-ish blaster. Well, they call it Transistor. I'm odeean. Thank you very much for watching.